Hi, Lenny.
Hi, Nancy.
Welcome to episode 124 of the Front Porch Book Club.
The Front Porch Book Club is a podcast that meets twice a month.
We like to dig deep into the relationship between characters and the worlds they live in.
Grab your book and iced tea and join us on the front porch.
Well, today, Lenny, we interview Kate Schatz about her book, Where the Girls Were. I think people are going to love this interview. Kate's heart really comes out in this interview. We learn about the characters. We learn about some of her motivation for the characters and, in fact, her motivation for the entire story.
Yeah, what a wonderful person that she is. And we enjoyed talking to her so much. Kate Schatz is a feminist author, educator, and public speaker. She's the New York Times-bestselling author of the RAD Women book series, the novel Where the Girls Were, the 33rd and one-third book, Rid of Me, a Story, and what I'm going to buy, Do the Work, an anti-racist activity book, co-written with United Shades of America host W. Kamau Bell. Kate taught women's studies, yay, and creative writing at UC Santa Cruz, San Jose State, Rhode Island College, and Brown University. She currently teaches private creative writing workshops to youth and adults and hosts Writing Wednesdays, a weekly Zoom co-writing session. She lives in the Bay Area with her wife, 3 children, and pets. In all she does, Kate is committed to sharing radical histories that shine light on the marginalized people who've truly made America great. The people of color, the immigrants, the queers, the punks, the weirdos, the artists, the workers, and the women.
Great. Let's get to it. Welcome, Kate, to our front porch.
Thank you so much.
Kate, we're so pleased to meet you. We loved your book, Where the Girls Were. When did you know that you wanted to be an author?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I was just looking at an old photo this morning that my mom has saved all these years. That is me in 2nd grade. And I'm standing in front of a room of people and I'm holding a little pink book that I wrote. And I was at the Young Authors Book Fair. That was a county-wide program in the school district where I grew up. And in 2nd grade, everybody in my class had the assignment of writing our own book. And I thought it was the greatest thing that had ever happened in school. And I still remember being kind of confused that not all of my classmates were as thrilled as I was. I was like, this is the most amazing thing. And, some people were like, I don't want to write a book, and I loved it. And so there's this photo of me and I have a dress on and everybody got to stand up and present their book. And I think that maybe mine might have been actually selected. I think I might have won an award. So I did a special presentation. I don't think that in that moment I was thinking, aha, I am going to be a writer when I grow up, but I definitely know it's when the seed was planted.
So what was the book about? Do you remember?
Oh, of course. I still have it.
Oh,
actually.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. I actually have it right. I have it right here. And I understand this is a podcast, so we'll have to.
You have to show us. This is exciting.
I have it somewhere. It's somewhere in here because I actually bring it with me when I do visits to schools a lot. I do a lot of author assemblies. And so it's somewhere in a mess. I'll dig it out. It's called Little Sisters. It's a semi-autobiographical. I passed it off as fiction, but it's a story about a young girl and her annoying younger sister. And then the older sister gets hurt. She hurts her ankle and the younger sister comes to her rescue and she realizes how much she loves her little sister. It was really inspired by my real life little sister, but it's also just totally Beezus and Ramona, fan fiction, basically.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I love that. When did you decide writing as a career was a possibility for you?
Right. That didn't occur to me when I was there in 2nd grade with that book.
Right.
I didn't see writing as an actual career for myself until the first time I experienced actual commercial success for one of my books, which was when my book, RAD Women, A to Z, which was a children's book about inspiring cool women from history, that became very, very unexpectedly successful. And it became a kind of surprise New York Times bestseller and a runaway kind of viral success in a way that nobody really saw coming. And I think that was when I finally, for the first time, thought, oh, maybe this could actually be a real career. I had been publishing for about 10 to 15 years before that, but I was also teaching full time, and writing was my passion, but it wasn't what I imagined I could make a career out of.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of your family, you've said that Where the Girls Were was inspired by your mom's experience. What can you tell us about your mom and her experience?
Yeah. So Where the Girls Were is, it's set in 1968 in San Francisco, and it's about a teenage girl who gets pregnant and is sent away to a home for unwed mothers, and where she and the other girls who are there are expected and coerced into giving up their babies for adoption. And it is fiction. It's a novel, but it is totally inspired by my mom's experiences in the 60s. So my mom had 2 unplanned pregnancies in the 1960s, and both times she was sent away to live in private homes by my grandparents and gave up both babies for adoption. And it's something that I didn't know about until I was in my 20s. And my mom and I are quite close, but this was such a deeply held secret. She was one of hundreds of thousands of young women. Estimates are even that up to 1.5 million young women between the end of World War II and 1973, when Roe versus Wade was decided. So about 1.5 million young women were pregnant and gave up children for adoption, mostly through maternity homes in that era. And the majority of them were told to never speak of it again. The whole point of the homes was to keep you out of the public eye, keep you from shame, and you give up the baby, you come home, you act like nothing happened. So that was my mom's experience. And then, when I was an adult, she decided she wanted to tell me. And I was heartbroken for her and proud of her for sharing. And I was also fascinated because I'd never heard of this. And I was like a pretty self-righteous know-it-all feminist, and really felt like I knew my women's history, and I'd never heard of this phenomenon. So I started doing a lot of research and eventually asked my mom if she'd be okay if I wrote a book inspired by it.
Wow. Has she read your book?
She has. Oh, yes, for sure.
What did she think of it?
Not only has she read it, but she was just with me on a number of my book events for book tour. She's been joining me and looking fabulous. My mom has great style. She read it a while ago. I worked on it for years before I let her see it. So I did give her a finished draft. So she read that a couple years ago, and she's reread it a few times, and she loves it. I'm really lucky. I have a really supportive mom. My mom's like the most voracious reader I know. That's where my love of reading came from. We would go to the library every week. She's constantly reading. There's stacks of books everywhere. And she's someone who's still, my mom's 78. She, on a regular basis, will start a new novel at 8 or 9 p.m. and stay up until 4 a.m. devouring the entire thing. Mm-hmm. Like we'll talk on the phone, and she'll say, well, I'm a little tired. I was up until 4 reading. And I'm like, Mom, that's how I fall asleep. Like if I read at night, I'm just out. So all of that is to say that her reading the book was, nerve wracking for me. One, because it's inspired by her and I wanted to do right by her and her experiences, but also she's like the most critical reader I know. So I'm very pleased to say that she really loves it, both on a literary level, but also on a personal level. She feels really validated and is really happy that I told the story.
I'm glad that that's her experience when she's running around with you on those book tours. I would imagine that people are interested in talking to her about her own experiences.
Yeah, and absolutely.
She's kind of a celeb now, right?
Yeah, and let's just say I don't think she minds the attention.
That's great.
I don't get my outgoing personality from nowhere. She's been really happy to join me, and at a number of events. I've always introduced her and mentioned that she's there, and she's raised her hand and kind of weighed in and shared a little bit more of her experiences with the audience as well. And it's been really empowering and validating for her to kind of finally talk about this. I mean, in addition to this being something that she held very secret for a long time, once she did tell me and start to kind of be a little more open about it, she also just didn't have a lot of forums to share that story. She doesn't have a platform. What is she going to just like randomly start talking about it to everybody she knows? I think so. This has been a way for her story to be out there and for her to be able to talk about it without her having to just randomly take to Facebook to write a whole post about it, which wouldn't be her style.
Right.
Audience members have definitely been really curious, but also very respectful of her. At some of the events kind of after when I'm doing my signing, I've seen people kind of approaching her, and some people have asked, I'd really love to talk to your mom. Can I just go say hi to her, go talk to her. She'd love it.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that comes through very clearly in the book is that sense of shame that you mentioned, that this was like the most shameful thing that could happen. We are working very hard to keep this a secret. Baker's mom invents this ludicrous story of Baker going off to the Sorbonne. There was so much shame around unwed moms, but there was also so much ignorance, which I think you captured so well. Baker herself, she knows very little about her own body. She knows practically nothing about how one gets pregnant. The home she goes to perpetuates that ignorance by telling the girls, do not talk with us about each other. The girls, when they finally give birth, they just disappear. Was that your mom's experience?
A lot of that was. In particular with the not knowing, that's something that really struck me. My mom is a very, very smart woman. She's very bright. I've always seen her as this very, very intelligent, strong person. So when she did share this story with me, part of my reaction was just kind of like, how did you not know? Did you not understand? And she has just told me over and over again, she just didn't really know. Nobody talked to her about sex, about pregnancy, about options. Birth control was not yet widely available. She was pregnant in 1966 and 67. The birth control existed, but it wasn't widely available. She didn't really know about it. She just didn't know. I really wanted to get at that dichotomy. Baker, my protagonist, she's very, very smart, valedictorian. She's really book smart. But then there's just this kind of chasm between her book knowledge and her intellect and the information that has been available to her about her body. So that is something I really, really wanted to capture. So my mom's experience with her pregnancies was different in that she didn't go into a home quite like the one described in the book. The one in the book is more of the kind of common experience. My mom ended up through some family friends living in a private home and then having to move to another one and then another one. And it was early drafts of the book followed her story a little more closely. And then I actually felt that for the sake of plot and also wanting to just create something that was entirely separate from her story, I changed the setting. But so for my mom, unlike in the book where the young women in the home, even though they're told not to really talk to each other, of course they do.
Right.
So my mom didn't even have that. She was actually incredibly isolated and wasn't able to talk to anyone else who had this experience.
Yeah, I think from what I know of that era, and I'm about 10 years probably younger than your mom, is that a lot of families sent their girls away to relatives or friends of the family instead of certainly maternity homes for the wayward girls or whatever they call them. But yeah, that was a pretty common experience too. They just needed to go away.
Right. And often saying that they were going to a family member's house was cover for them going into a home. And one of the things I try to talk about too, in my mom's story in particular, is that my grandparents were actually really wonderful. Like they weren't bad. It wasn't a religious household. It wasn't a particularly conservative one. It was for the time and place of relatively progressive, middle-class, white Bay Area home in the 60s. I mean, my grandparents weren't radical hippies like my mom's sister and brother, but they, this wasn't like a super repressive situation. This was just really kind of how it was done. And I wanted to kind of capture that in the book too, that the decision that was made to send these girls away. The people that did this weren't monsters. It can sound monstrous now, but this was in a time with very, very little option. This was one of them.
Right. One of the themes that comes through really clearly in Where the Girls Were is the unequal burden that women bear from the consequences of unprotected sex. And the book mentions that for as long as there's been sex and babies, women have been taking care of each other. And you illustrate that so beautifully. And some of the taking care of each other is inept, as I think of May. And even Rose really maybe isn't quite as forthcoming as she could be in the beginning and middle part of the book. Was that a point that you wanted to make, that none of this is new, folks? And who bears this is the women.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for picking up on that and seeing that and mentioning it. Yeah, that was a really important line that I wanted to have throughout the book was, one, this is how it's always been, right? Women have always been taking care of each other. And for many generations and still, that care often looks like secrecy and hiding, right? It's often a survival strategy, keeping information from people, from each other, from others, hiding facts, hiding things that have happened is a way to survive and to protect. But also, yeah, this idea of how women have always taken care of each other and that unequal burden. And I also, just in the same way that I didn't want it to all the people who sent their girls away to necessarily be awful parents, the young man who gets Baker pregnant, I didn't want him to be a jerk. Like, he's not a bad guy. He's just kind of a dude. He's like a young hippie dude and he's doing his thing. So I didn't want him to be a bad guy. But at the same time, it is just profoundly unequal. He gets to just kind of walk away and go on with his life. And she, who was just as much as he was seeking a good time and enjoying herself, her life is changed forever.
Yeah. I loved the parallel that the mother took on the burden of trying to figure out what to do with this pregnancy. And the father didn't put too much effort into it as well.
Yeah.
It was the woman's problem. Mom will take care of it, or my wife will take care of it.
Mom will take care of it. She'll figure it out and she'll do everything she can with the tools that she has available to her to make it work.
Right. So let's talk about Baker a little bit. She is a very smart young girl, but she doesn't really know herself very well. She certainly is in the dark about sexuality, of course. She doesn't even have a lot of friends. She has a cousin that's a little older than her, but they kind of connect and become better friends as the book goes on. You get the sense that Baker's just beginning to understand herself. She certainly is going to learn more about her mother through this experience. And that Baker spends some time in a commune. And my sister and I both in the 60s and early 70s got to spend a week or two at a commune.
Oh, good.
That is an area we have some experience. Do you believe through your journey with Baker that she will find her people, her community?
Oh, what a great question. Yes, I absolutely do. And that was actually something I thought about when I was writing her. I mean, this is where I start to feel like when I talk about my characters, I'm like, am I going to sound like a total lunatic? But like,
No.
I really felt like I was seeing her in this space that felt very familiar to me, right? These teenage years where you haven't, like you said, found your people yet. And she's someone who, again, she's very smart, very book smart, and very cautious and just a good girl. She's an only child. And she's also kind of someone who's always been on the outside looking in. So I describe a few scenes where she's really fascinated by bad girls and the fast girls and the hippies, you know, and she's like, how do they do that? You know, like, what is it like? How do they just get so wild and free? Like, she kind of can't figure out like how someone could let themselves go like that, right? Because she's in control and she's, just kind of always kind of watching on the periphery. And then through this experience, she's just like thrust into the reality of the world. And so the idea that, you know, of what kind of happens after what, you know, the book takes place during the pregnancy and we don't necessarily know where she goes and what happens. And I really love imagining that. And part of what I've imagined is that, yes, that exactly what you said, that she is someone who is going to go out into the big world and absolutely find her people. She did not grow up around her people. She's definitely kind of a black sheep in her family as a more of a middle working class family, and she's kind of the intellectual. And I think that she's definitely going to go out and find her folks.
That's great. You mentioned the ambiguous ending to this book. Linny has gotten to the point where she loves the ambiguous endings. When we started this podcast, I think, Linny, you used to be a little more frustrated by them.
Well, okay, Kate, I'm not really a reader. I've always said that. That's was the reader.
She is now.
Okay.
So now I know things about plot. But yeah, so I thought they were like movies, like you're supposed to close them up, and I didn't understand that but I loved this. And I loved trying to figure out what's Baker going to do. I'm assuming you did this purposely. But can you tell us the reason for leaving it open like this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like a bit of a spoiler. So I don't know how you talk about spoilers with your listeners.
We can talk about spoilers, yes.
So they can fast forward. But what I will say is the ending is ambiguous. And it was really, really important to me, the way the book ends. And I knew that it would be somewhat controversial, that some people might feel unsatisfied and definitely want to know more. But the reason I did that was that in the end, I want Baker to have privacy. And I want her to be able to make a decision that is whatever is best for her. But I wanted her to have privacy, because that is what women are so often denied when it comes to the choices that are best for them and their body. And that's also what is constitutionally protected. And a lot of people don't necessarily realize that Roe versus Wade, the 1973 Supreme Court decision, wasn't decided on whether or not abortion as a medical procedure it should or should not be legal. It was decided on the constitutional right to privacy. And when it was overturned in 2022, what they were in the Dobbs decision, what they were again overturning was the right to privacy. And so the right to be able to make decisions about ourselves, our bodies, our healthcare in private is what they found in Roe. And the ripple effect from the Dobbs decision in 2022, at this point, it's not just about reproductive rights and abortion. It's also about trans people and healthcare. It reaches into access to medical care in all kinds of ways. But all that is to say, in the ending, I wanted her to have privacy. And I wanted readers to actually have to sit with their own opinions about what is best for her and what she should or should not do. Because so much of the experience of women when they're experiencing a pregnancy that wasn't necessarily planned is everybody else's opinions around them about what they should do and how they should handle it. And I wanted her to be able to have her experience, and also the reader to have to sit and think, wow, I really feel strongly about this. I really feel strongly this way or that way. So that's why.
I love that concept of privacy for your character.
Yeah.
I really thought when I ended the book, she'll do the right thing for her. That was my takeaway. I didn't feel like I had to solve the problem for her, or that I wanted her to do one thing more than the other. I thought, I think she's at the point now where she can make the decision that's going to be right for her.
Yeah, that trust is what our society does not have in women, right? That trust that you will make the decision that is right for you, right? So all of these efforts to control our body, to control our choices is rooted in complete lack of trust and our capability to make those decisions. So I'm really glad that you felt that way. I also trust that she knows what to do.
So one of the storylines we really loved was Rose's. At first, I really disliked Rose, but then very slowly you allow us to understand Rose's behavior. And by the end of the book, for me, I felt Rose really redeems herself. So I have two questions. Okay. The first one is very minor, and that is part of Rose's backstory is set outside Lincoln, Nebraska, where I live.
Oh.
Why is that? And then secondly, tell us what hope Rose's story held for you.
Oh, I love that. And I'm so glad, I think in earlier drafts of the book, Rose was a lot harsher, and I got some feedback from early readers. I never thought she was harsh. I thought she was great all along, but people felt that I needed to warm her up a little bit. I mean, she's complicated, aren't we all? But she's not bad at all. She's really working hard. So part of it is her backstory is set outside of Lincoln because I was drawing little bits and pieces from my family. While my grandmother was born in Kansas, Rose actually shares a very personal story about something that she experienced that was in Chicago. And I was thinking of a place that would be reasonable for her to travel from to get to Chicago, but that would also seem like a stretch. So I chose Lincoln. It's one of those things that an author kind of randomly chooses. I think of Rose, without sounding too woo-woo here, I think a lot in this book about these kind of portals that people kind of pass through, in your life, moments and experiences where you pass through and you learn something that opens up a whole new world of understanding, right? And so there's some kind of moments where Baker passes through different experiences when she goes into the home and learns all this. And then when she has this very profound conversation with her mother and learns a whole bunch about her family and her mother that she never knew. So I think of Rose being kind of a portal to the larger perspective on women's experiences, and also just showing what mothers keep and what women often hold and keep for their families. So Rose being the mother of Baker, but Rose is also a daughter, right? And she's a granddaughter. And so that way that as a mother and a woman, you kind of are this collector of all of these people's different experiences and then the holder of them. And sometimes you're the holder of secrets, and you're also often a protector of the people that came before you, the people that came after you. And so I was interested in Rose being that kind of portal for Baker into understanding herself and the larger context.
I love that, because I thought one of the most moving parts of this book for me is when Rose is saying, well, the neighbor girl 3 years ago, your cousin, this other girl, she had twins. Mm-hmm. And she had, as a mother, kept all of that and not shared it with Baker until the time when maybe Baker should have learned about this earlier, but you're right. She's keeping these secrets, trying to figure out when is an appropriate time, if ever, to share them.
I often joke that I think there's a thing that happens for us when it's a part of everybody's kind of coming of age. Maybe it's when you're a teenager, usually more when you're in your 20s, and you suddenly start to see your parents as like actual humans. You see them out beyond the scope of just you. It's like seeing your teacher at a grocery store when you're a kid, like outside of the classroom. Right. And you're like, whoa, Right. And so I think of that too, is that when you pass through this portal into adulthood and then suddenly the scope widens and you start to see them more as these complicated people, and you start to learn about all the other things around you that you didn't know. And I'm a mother, and I have a teenage daughter right now, and I'm very open with her. We're very close, but there's certainly things that I haven't shared with her yet, or that I know, or information that I hold for a variety of reasons, because it's not appropriate or it's not mine to we're always gathering and holding all this information. And so that's what I wanted from Rose. And I wanted to show what the fierceness of a mother's love, ideally, right?
Yes.
That I thought came out loud and clear with Rose. And I probably liked her more than Nancy did throughout the book, because I felt she's got Baker's back.
Yeah.
She loves her. She's doing what she thinks she should do. And she will manage this, and she will take it on for Baker.
Yeah.
She's there. She's in her corner.
Yeah, she does. She's got her back for sure. It's a complicated way of having a back, but she's got it.
Well, she had to figure out what she was going to do. Yeah. Like, oh my God, like what?
Yeah.
She didn't see that coming either.
No.
These kids. What did you do?
In the book, there's so much information about what's happening politically at the time. We get a lot of exposure to the music of the era, the club scene of the era. Was that something as a writer that you did, deciding, okay, this is how I'm adding the texture and the reality of the time? Or is that just fun stuff for you and you love that stuff, so of course it was going in? Or a combination?
All of that. It was absolutely. It was very important to me to set it against the socio-political culture of the time, right? I'm always thinking about that in my writing. What are the bigger things happening in the world? As I say in the author's note at the end, I was raised in the tie-dye shadows of the hippie era. So I grew up listening to my parents' music, grew up with their stories of living in San Francisco in the Bay Area in the 60s. And I still love hearing their wild, crazy concert stories. Somehow my dad still is telling me new stories. Just the other night, he's like, oh yeah, I was at one of the first be-ins at Golden Gate Park with Timothy Leary. And I'm like, what? Like,
what?
Dad, why don't I know? They've just got endless. So I really grew up loving all that. And also really, I think, romanticizing and kind of idealizing it. And so that was another part of wanting to write this book, is kind of showing this like underbelly of, oh, it was free love and it was revolutionary and it was a sexual revolution, but also what happened to these women.
Yeah.
But there's no way I could have written it without the music in it and without the culture. So that was also just fun. But I'm a total music lover. Music is always on and in my house and in my car. And I think about music all the time. So it was really fun to have all that as the backdrop.
I loved the cultural differences because the 60s wasn't just about free love and all of that. It was also the Brady Bunch of a conservative upbringing, and we don't have sex. We don't talk about it. And there will be no sex education in school either.
Yep.
That's off limits. So the society was experiencing a lot of that socio stress of, where are we going to go? What kind of culture do we want? What do we do with all of this? So I loved having those two pieces. Plus, the parents that were raising them were those parents that were growing up in World War II or coming up through at that time. And they had their own culture and their expectations from their parents that were World War I.
I know.
I loved all those generational influences that I was experiencing as I was reading through your book.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I do. I made a playlist for the book too. If you want, I can share that with you.
Awesome.
Definitely.
The 60s music was the best, honestly.
And it includes all the songs in the book, because there's some moments too where a song comes on the radio that she can't stand, like it's super square and she doesn't like it, but I put that on the playlist too, just because it's part of the whole texture of all of it.
That's great. I love that. We're going to add that.
Definitely. I love the one young woman we meet who is a singer and guitar player. What was the inspiration for her? Was she inspired because of your love of music?
Yeah. So that was a really fun character. We have this maternity home, and I wanted to create this kind of cast of characters of these other young girls that would be in there. And in part, I wanted them to function to showcase a real range of experience, how they ended up there. Some of them were in loving relationships with boyfriends and got pregnant. Some you can gather that they weren't, that there was some trauma, and some were sent away in a really horrific way. And, and they all have different relationships to being there. So it was really fun for me to just imagine who these girls were. And actually, Lizzie, the one with the guitar, honestly, she just like showed up, like in the way that she shows up at the home with her guitar. She just showed up in my imagination and she had a guitar. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Oh, cool. We've got a good come on in. Okay. Like, who are you? Whereas some of the other girls were more intentionally crafted. Like I really specifically wanted them to represent a certain kind of set of experience, but she just showed up with her guitar and just was cool and started singing. And I was like, okay, great. This is really fun. We're going to have fun with her. And I really enjoyed writing those scenes where they're singing. And I guess in a way, it almost made me think of The Sound of Music when Maria comes into the home with the Von Trapp children and has the guitar, and suddenly they're all connecting over a sing-along. Yeah. And she did let me get more music into the story.
I did love how those girls were such a cast of characters, as you say, and they each did represent different points of view, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different political orientations. I thought that was an interesting way to play with what Lenny was talking about, just some of the tension that was happening in society at the time.
Yeah. And well, so much of that comes from the research I did for this book too. I mean, I read a lot of oral histories of women who lived in these maternity homes. I read memoirs. There's a number of blogs and online forums where women share their stories. And I conducted a number of interviews as well. So a lot of the details that show up in the girls, I mean, again, I was fictionalizing everybody, but a lot of those details do come from the research I did.
So the title of the book, I was wondering, is that your title or is that a title that your publisher chose? Because for me, it asks the question that then the novel answers.
Oh, good. Okay, so my answer is actually both. I had a lot of different titles for this book, I think, as a lot of authors do. Although once I know my title, it's set. But this one, I couldn't land on a title. And the title that it had when I sold the book, I honestly knew that it wasn't the right title. We'd been editing the draft. I think we were done, like finished my revisions, and everything was pretty locked up. And my editor sent an email and said, I was just in a meeting with marketing, and would you be open to changing the title? And I was actually thrilled, and also then totally terrified, because I was like, yes, of course. Oh no. What's it going to be? So I did come up with this title, with Where the Girls Were, was my idea once we went into a rapid multi-day brainstorm. So the marketing team from the publisher sent a whole bunch of ideas, and none of them felt right, but they kickstarted my own brainstorm. And once I had the chance to retitle it, I did want something that referenced a song. So Where the Girls Were certainly is referencing Where the Boys Are, the iconic early 60s song.
Oh, okay. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. Then once I came up with it, I was just like, oh, that's it. So I did cycle through some other potential titles in those few days, because it was like, we'd love to change the title, and also we'd like to do that now, right away. Right. I was like, But it's good, because I think sometimes if you have too long to make a big decision like that, you'll just spin and spin. So it was nice to just know, oh my God, I've got to figure it out right away.
Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you about one of your other books. You mentioned the RAD Women that you've done, the series for children. Tell us about your book, Do the Work, an anti-racism activity book.
Absolutely. So Do the Work is, as the subtitle says, an anti-racist activity book. My co-author and I often joke that we're pretty sure it's the only anti-racist activity book in existence, because what a weird concept. And we did that on purpose. So I co-authored that book with Kamau Bell, who is a really good friend of mine, and someone who's far more famous than I. He is an Emmy-winning director, hosted United Shades of America on CNN for many years.
Love him.
It's a Netflix stand-up comedy special. He was recently, of all his accolades, he has actually just won Celebrity Jeopardy. So now he's a Jeopardy champion, as if he needed another feather in his cap. So Kamau is a dear friend of mine. He is also a Black man. And I, for your listeners, if it's not clear, am a white woman. And we have been, again, friends and for many years, and also involved in a lot of activism and anti-racist activism. And so in 2020, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, when the protests were happening, and suddenly it seemed like all of America was very interested in thinking and talking and reading about racism, Kamau and I had the idea to write a book together. But we also knew that people might have been buying those books that were suddenly bestsellers that were being recommended, and then they'd get them and they'd be like, oh, this is 400 pages and it's deeply researched and scholarly, and it's really hard and complicated. And no disrespect to most people, but I think attention spans aren't maybe what they used to be. But we also know that really talking about race and racism and white supremacy and what we can actually do about it is very hard work. And it is very hard for a lot of people to do, especially white people. So we wanted to create something that used humor and used an unexpected format to have those conversations. So it's an activity book, and it has games in it. There are crossword puzzles about history. We do a connect the dots activity, and then it's actually how you learn about the history of gerrymandering voting districts. There's a color by numbers activity, and when you color in the map, it's a lesson on redlining and the history of disenfranchisement in housing. There's a game called Jim Crow or Jim Foe, where you have to guess if the law was a real Jim Crow era law or a pretend one that we made up. I'm going to give it away and tell you that actually all the laws that we have on the page are real. That's the punchline, is that all these laws that seem ridiculous are actually true. So it's kind of a historical look, and it's a conversation between Kamau and I. You actually were meant to do the activities, play the games, answer the questions, and hopefully learn a lot about yourself and your relationship to race along the way.
I love that. I'm getting that. I would prefer that than the 400-page scholarly review.
Most of us would. So in my other books, in the RAD Women series, I wrote with illustrator Miriam Kleinstahl. Those books are for young readers, although they're actually for people of all ages. But they're illustrated and they're mostly focused on stories of obscure, lesser-known, radical women and feminists from history from around the world. And in order to make subject matter like that interesting and engaging, I need to make it fun. I need to use bright colors. I use illustrations. I use really fun, engaging storytelling. So that's kind of how I've done all of my work. I like to take these topics that people shy away from, that people maybe don't know much about, that are potentially polarizing or controversial, and a Trojan horse, make them engaging and fun and playful and get people to read them.
And they're portals into a new understanding.
There you go.
Speaking of portals.
Absolutely. I do. I think that they're absolutely portals into new understanding, into empathy, and into new perspectives.
Is Where the Girls Were your first attempt to do all of that in novel form?
It is. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. You put so much into this novel, but it is told in such an engaging way that you're experiencing all of this through Baker's eyes in just such an authentic way, I think.
Thank you. I've started out as a fiction writer, not just in second grade with that book, but throughout high school. And then it's what I focused on as an undergrad. And then it's what I did my MFA in. So fiction writing was always one of my passions, but activism and social justice and change making was also always my other passion. And so figuring out how to bring them together and then really to bring them both into fiction is really satisfying.
I have enjoyed this conversation so much and learning about your passion and your social change and all of the feminist work and all of that good stuff. I just love all of that. What is the best way for people to find out more or to stay in touch with what you're doing in your next projects?
There's a couple different ways. I do have a Substack newsletter that's called I Love What You're Doing. And I started it out where I was just writing profiles and interviewing other people whose work I really like and I love what they're doing. But I also write about myself and my books and I give updates. I have a website, which is kateschatz.com. And then I'm also on Instagram. And that is where I put a lot of updates. So those are kind of the main ones. But the Substack is free to subscribe. You can pay if you want, but I keep it free as an option as well. And so I put a lot there and on the Instagram.
Great.
I'll put links to all of that in the notes for this episode. What are you working on next?
I'm working on a new novel.
Yes.
Nice.
Yay. Once this was all wrapped up and finished, it's like this whole new cast of characters just showed up at my door in my brain and we're like, okay, let's go. So, that one is set in the early 1980s and it's set at a fictional lesbian bar in Oakland, California. It's kind of another story about lesser known histories and it's about community of queer women and bars and their softball league. But then it's also about lesbian mothers losing and then fighting for custody of their children.
Yeah.
I know I'm like another fun topic from Kate, but it's also, I'm finding as I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, this is a fun book. This is a fun book because I've got this great cast of characters who are all these regulars in a bar and they all play softball together and they've all got all kinds of stories.
Awesome. That sounds so good.
That does sound great.
Nancy and I were on a softball team for years.
Great.
We won one game in 4 years.
Wow.
That just shows you a little bit about our softball team.
I mean, you know what? I'm impressed because it takes a lot to keep playing for 4 years and you keep losing.
It was about the gumballs back then. We got a gumball if we made it home.
Oh, that's adorable. I love that. Well, it's been part of my research for this book is getting to interview all these people who played softball in these bar leagues in the Bay Area, and it's really fun.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a delight to meet you and hear about your work and talk more about where the girls were. Really have enjoyed this conversation and appreciate your time.
Me too. I've enjoyed this tremendously. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate. Nancy, this is one author I'd like to meet.
Yes.
I mean, we met her on our front porch, but I would like to go to California and meet with her at her front porch and just spend the afternoon talking about our passions and how we think about things.
Yeah. I think she's so interesting. And I definitely think that there's a lot of overlap in her passion for social justice and feminism and so much that it would be fun to hear more about that. You just have the sense that she's got 1,001 experiences. She talked about still hearing stories from her dad. I think she's the kind of person who has a lot of stories that she could tell.
I think she and I could get in trouble together.
Oh, you two definitely could.
Yeah, that's why I liked her. Plus, she's going to make reading more fun with colorful stories, workbooks, lots of illustrations, all that.
The thing about Kate's writing, though, that I think is so interesting, given her background and her desires for a more just world, a lot of times writers, when they are coming from a very strong philosophical place, the writing can be kind of wooden. It can be a little preachy. It can suffocate a story. Okay, Kate's writing is not at all like that. This is a great story. And we talked a lot about some of the hard things in the story, but there's a lot of levity in the story too. This is not a heavy book. This is just a great read. And I think that's very hard to accomplish.
I think so too. I think it makes it possible because we're getting the story from a minor, like a girl, a 17-year-old, very naive girl growing up in the 60s. So it creates that lens of, it can't be preachy. It's her own experiences. She's in the dark. She just doesn't know a lot. But I just wonder if Kamau Bell had something to do with that too. Like, keep all this stuff kind of light. And if people don't know who he is, you got to look him up because he's so fun and fabulous.
You love Kamau Bell.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, if he shows up at her back porch or her front porch, you know, it's going to be into the wee hours. If he'll have me. He may not. He'll be like, this lady's too much. We got to let her go. You've said enough now. But no, what a wonderful lady. Lovely interview. I'm looking forward to her next book.
Oh, I am too. It sounds like a great romp for sure.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, next time on the front porch, we are going to talk about the book Inheritance. And this is written by Jane Park.
Yeah, we've both read the book, so we are ready to go.
We're ready to go.
It'll be fun to talk about, and then we'll also have a chance to talk with Jane about it.
Yes.
So looking forward
to it. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, we must be sisters. We talk the same. The same sentence. Nancy, I will see you next time.
Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. Our website is frontporchbookclub.com.
Our episodes come out twice a month.
Bye-bye.
Bye.